A little boy in 3D glasses plays a game console. He fights a huge monster. The world has entered the era of virtual reality, and VR is now limited only by the types of devices. The battle is ongoing. A certain menacing-looking man with a saber extends his hand to a small, frightened girl, saying that she is the last one left. He runs after the young witch, who screams in horror and runs as fast as she can wherever her eyes look, clinging to life with her last strength. But the terrible warrior eventually catches up with her, piercing her with his sword. Two young men discuss that something is clearly wrong with these players. They go to the events for newbies and do whatever they want. In this game, the physical abilities of the character correspond to real abilities. The arrow whistles through the air. There are 4 players left in the arena. The arrow flies and lingers in one of them. The faces of the other players show genuine surprise. The younger you are, the better your reflexes and physical abilities. One of the players shouts that someone else is left and needs to be found. The young man says that the others must be joking with him. He, sitting on the ground, looks around in amazement and does not understand where this arrow just flew from and whether it was the last one. Simply put, this whole game is for young people. Suddenly, a well-equipped guy appears on the slope with a bow in his hand. His gaze is menacing and does not bode well. A week earlier, this same guy looked completely different. When he left his job, he said that he enjoyed working with his colleagues. His words were ignored, and the rest of the people in the office continued to talk among themselves, not paying any attention to him. The guy decided to leave the company himself before his boss fired him. He worked in a department that developed retro-style games, and now they are extremely rare. Time goes on, and the manager came up with a new plan that clearly went against the plans of this guy who put his soul into these games. The young man recalls how he was told that his work was not bad, but a little old-fashioned, and the overall concept was somewhat vague. Since the game does not correspond to the spirit of the time, the management has no reason to keep an employee who does nothing but live in the past. Walking down the hallway with his things in his hands and thinking about what to do next, the young man hears a child crying. He passionately demands something, and the mother replies that it is too early for him. The young man turns his head and sees a full-fledged next-generation VR game on the shop window. It is already here, and you can start playing it. Users are like migrating fish. The most popular game takes all the players. The guy feeds his goldfish thinking about how to install this game. If users don't like the game or start to get bored, then they, like fish, swim to another game. We're in a time where people interact with each other through games, not really focusing on the game itself, and a guy comes up with an idea. So he simply needs to adapt to this era. He gets into a special machine that starts loading, and after some time says that the setup is complete and it starts the program. From that day on, the young man becomes the sane fish. The game started and transported him to some place. The young man tries to figure out where he ended up when someone extends a paw to him and says, "Welcome." It turns out to be a rabbit in a hat. He says that the young man is in the NSO world of Nextaria, and that he was waiting for Mr. Kyuji. His real name is Nagai Kyuji, but in this world he is just Kyuji. He had problems with creating the character, but since he is staying in this game for a long time for his own peace of mind, he decided to make a character similar to him. Meanwhile, the rabbit shows the guy the park. There are already many people in the park. Some are talking to each other, some are competing, and the rabbit explains that weapons and skills can be used in the city. They also add that other players will not take damage, but they do not recommend experimenting here if players want to keep their skills secret. The hare continues to talk, and Kyuji thinks about how realistic everything looks here. The hare advises choosing one of the starting professions and offers a choice of an archer, a warrior, or a magician. Each profession has its own equipment status and skills. Within 3 days from the first exit, the player can freely change the profession. Also during these days, players cannot die, so the rabbit advises not to be afraid, try new things, and boldly go into battle. Kyuji, obviously at the first battle, having chosen a warrior with the ball in hand, shouts for the guys to be careful and goes to the monster. He swings his sword and pierces the horrible-looking creature. The girls that Kyuji was protecting scream his name, to which the young man turns away and says that everything is fine, and suddenly another monster, which he did not notice, swings at him from behind. At that very moment, the young man turns around and defeats this monster with one deft move of his sword. He also thinks how cool this is, and clicks on the choice of the profession of a magician. Kyuji checks his status, which clearly shows all the weak and strong points. He thinks that, like in all games, here one half of the indicators is much weaker than the other. However, the young man does not quite understand what the status called spirit is responsible for. He thinks that he should study this topic. When someone shouts at him from behind, Kyuji turns and asks if it was addressed to him. It turns out that they are girls, magicians, and witches. They ask if he wants to join their party. Kyuji looks at them with alarm and distrust. He thinks that such beauties are harmful to his old heart. They answer that he is not at all against being with them, but wonders why they chose him. The girl replies that they want to go into a real fight, but to do that they need to create a party of at least 4 people, and Kyuji also looks pretty strong. Kyuji, hearing this, is embarrassed and thinks that his abilities are too obvious. The young man, filled with confidence, joins their party and says that he will show what a former gaming industry worker is capable of. During the battle, Kyuji thinks that he has no control over his body at all, and it was said that the game will have the same physical indicators as in reality. In the battle itself, he wonders if he is too old for all this. The girl calls out to Kyuji, warning him that the enemy is coming towards him. Meanwhile, a mad, enraged rabbit is jumping towards him. Kyuji grabs the sword from behind his back and says that he will take care of it, and this is not the end. An enraged mad rabbit and a young man clash. With a deft movement, Kyuji swings his sword, but the rabbit jumps over him, and now he is already a few centimeters away from his opponent. The mad rabbit sinks its blades into the young man's throat. Kyuji screams in pain, and suddenly a fireball flies towards him. He collides with the rabbit and throws it many meters away from Kyuji, while the young man consoles himself with the thought that, in fact, nothing terrible happened and he was saved. He thanks the girls, to which they excitedly ask why he didn't adjust the pain settings. The young man doesn't understand what settings he's talking about. One of the girls explains that, by default, they are turned on at maximum. Experts say that this helps sharpen other senses and movements. Kyuji says that for all the benefits, it is still too painful. The young man decides to change the settings and offers to try again, to which the girls loudly answer no, explaining that they have been keeping him like this for too long and it is wrong of them. They thank him and hope for a meeting. The young man notices that his neck no longer hurts, but his heart is broken as he was useless. His memory flashes back to a moment in the past when his friend tells him that he can leave early today. Then, young Kyuji asks his friend if he didn't need help with the data, to which he replies that he asked another person to help with this because in such matters Kyuji himself is too meticulous. Kyuji can't accept this answer. He understands that this is his first fight and decides to set all the settings to 0, then everything will be great for him. He decides to return to the city and join another party. However, a new hell awaits him in the city. The role of Vanguard didn't suit him, so he came to try the mage, and at first, everything went well. Another party invited him to join them. However, after this, people start to rub his nose in the fact that he starts to read the wrong spells, that he hesitates and forgets what he was told. Kyuji's incompetence is his own fault, but it's so humiliating to be scolded for it by the youth. So Kyuji decided to leave the party again. Still, the young man decides that it is easier in the vanguard, so he again changed his profession to a warrior. Meanwhile, another party again invited him to join them. But he again faces denial and criticism that he is not moving properly, that he is old, that he is looking in the wrong place, and he is told to give up this idea, because he is more suited to the role of support. However, the insults did not end there, and Kyuji received a new skill. From now on, swinging his sword creates a wind cutter. At first glance, this is a very ordinary skill, but the way Kyuji received it did not go unnoticed by other players. The young man tried very hard throughout the fight, and this was an act of desperation. In this game, skills are given not only for leveling up and defeating monsters, but also for the style of play. The boy starts laughing, saying that they would never have gotten such a skill in their entire lives, that he is actually mocking and all his attempts look funny. So Kyuji leaves this party. He again remembers moments from real life when he brings a paper about dismissal to the director's office. The director says his name, and the guy himself thinks that he is not needed here and is just a nuisance. And even if the director tries to persuade him to stay, he has already decided everything. But all the director says is words of condolence that he is leaving and wishes him luck in his next job. Meanwhile, in the virtual world, Kyuji is handed something with the words that it belongs to him. But the young man turns around and says that he doesn't need it. He is sure that even in the VR world no one needs him, and he doesn't belong here. He thinks he's had enough of NSO and will find a job where he doesn't have to interact with people. Meanwhile, a guy with an interesting haircut calls out to him. He adds that he said that the Vanguard is not his thing, but a mage is not an option either. They are always pushed around, especially healers. A young man with an interesting hairstyle advises Kyuji to become an archer, because although it is not the most popular profession, everything can change in the future. The guy agrees to his proposal, but he can't stop wondering why he needs it and what kind of status this is. Kyuji tried himself as a warrior and a mage, but he failed, so one young player advised him to try another profession, namely an archer. The young man understands why this is the most unpopular profession in NSO. The young man opened the character's status, and in comparison with other professions, this status is completely balanced. There are no strengths and weaknesses. The only advantage is speed. But it is worth considering the capabilities of the real body. The warrior's unique status is spirit. When HP drops to a certain level, the player's defense and attack indicators increase. The gain depends on the spirit points and HP level. For the magician, it is a miracle. While the archer has range. Having chosen the profession of an archer, Kyuji finds a monster that he considers too big for him. However, he needs to test how effective this thing is, so he decides to fight it. The young man reassures himself that nothing ventured, nothing gained. He pulls the bowstring and shoots. The arrow passed the monster, and Kyuji thought that he was not hitting from such a distance, and he needed to choose something else. The young man thinks that the only option is to increase the value with level-up points, but he still doubts that this is the right decision. He fires, increasing his range again, and he hits the monster right on target. He can't believe his eyes. I'm stunned, and watch as the monster slowly turns around. The chase begins. The monster, groaning terribly, chases the young man, who wonders whether everything is good or bad now. The young man thinks that the first level is +5 to the range, so at the 10th level, there will be +50 meters. But this is the indicator of a standard bow, and if you take a bow with an increased range, and he thinks that he can shoot from a distance of 100 meters and the enemy will not notice him, he does not even need to hold his breath. This is a victory without a fight, and it is enough to just stand in and shoot at the enemy. He shoots the monster again. Compared to other players, Kyuji will lack firepower as he will focus on long-range shooting and will have to rely on weapons and skills. But he doesn't think this will be a problem. After all, he will be able to shoot endlessly while the other players try to figure out where he is. Pulling the bowstring again, Kyuji is glad that he found a better strategy because he hasn't experienced this feeling for so long and has forgotten what it's like. The feeling when you test your own idea in practice. The only thing he needs to do is raise the range to the ceiling. Kyuji fights the monster while a girl watches him from behind an oak tree. Kucha is able to escape from the giant gorilla and receives a new automatic collection item, the rabbit's front tooth. The young man focused on leveling up in the hunting grounds for beginners. He can handle it solo, and of course he wanted revenge. He remembers his fight when a crazy rabbit grabbed him by the throat. As he shoots the crazy rabbit again, Kyuji thinks that even though he has never held a bow in his life, it somehow feels like a part of him. Once again, the young man hits the rabbit and thinks that perhaps it is fate. He soon reaches level 7 and thinks that as he levels up and gains more, it feels easier. Although he hasn't upgraded the range yet, he wants to throw all the points in at once so that the effect is more noticeable. The girl who is watching him from the tree is wondering if he will also level up. Suddenly, a huge saber-toothed beast jumps out from somewhere and starts chasing Kyuji. The young man asks if this is really a beginner's area, since you have to run from such a huge thing, not try to kill it. He wonders if he can even run away from it with his legs. The guy's eyes reflect the monster's saber-toothed mouth, but he's not going to go down without a fight. He pulls out 3 arrows from his quiver and pulls the bowstring. And with one movement, he hits the monster right in the mouth. The guy falls on his back, and the bear swings and stops. Kyuji gets a new item auto collection for a blood bear. He thinks he's cool today, and the sorceresses should see him now. He also gets a new skill called dangerous shooting. The young man is thinking about how to test his new skill, to do it in the party grounds or somewhere where there is a safe place, and suddenly he hears some sound coming from the tree. He climbs a tree with difficulty and looks at the setting sun. Such an incomparable, beautiful sunset brings back memories for him. For a long time, he sits on the tree and thinks that he would like to swing some more, but it's time to go. He has leveled up and he has as many as 10 points. Without thinking, he puts everything into range. The basic bow has a shooting range of 15 meters, with a range that he can increase to 40 meters, and now he's going to look at his new skill and wonder if he will be as lucky as last time. He spots another saber-toothed bear below and decides this is a perfect opportunity to try out his new skill, and shoots a short-range arrow from a short distance. It is 15 meters from the ground, and this significantly reduces the power of the shot. Under normal circumstances, such a shot would not even scratch the monster. But now he has a range of 25, and if he understood everything correctly, then the one he put up should not lose power. The arrow hits the bear, which growls and falls to the ground. Kyuji realizes that the short-range arrow is a powerful thing and realizes that he has chosen his main weapon. Meanwhile, the girl who is watching him says that he has not made a single mistake, and that a simple dacha cannot explain this, although his movements look sluggish. She decides it will be fun. The next day, Kyuji decides to go deeper into the forest. He is still not at the level to go to the party hunting grounds, so he will have to hunt small game. He has difficulty aiming at the snake because it is too nimble. He feels a little awkward using the new skill in front of other players, but he decides to give it a try anyway. It fires a chain arrow that will bounce off objects until it hits a player or monster, or until the range is reached. After several bounces, the arrow finally hits the snake. Kyuji, seeing how the arrow pierced the snake, thinks that of course it is difficult to predict where it will bounce from, but it helps to hide his location. The chain arrow is given as a reward for reaching a certain level. Yesterday, when the young man left NSO and began to gather information about it, almost nothing was said about the archer, since it is a completely unpopular profession. Kyuji understands that he will have to experience everything on his own skin to understand the peculiarities of his profession, and soon there will be an event for beginners for which the young man is diligently pumping up. During the test, Kyuji unexpectedly encounters a spider, which leaves him extremely confused. He doesn't understand when the spider managed to crawl here and, leaning his back against the wall, tells him not to come closer. The young man screams in horror and tries to fight off the spider. The spider attacks, and then the young man shoots with a bow. The short-range arrow accurately pierces the spider and throws it back several meters. Kyuji, struggling to get to his feet, gains a new skill and realizes that defeating weak opponents can also be rewarded. And so the range increases by 10 if the player is wearing a bow. The reason for obtaining it is the first step on the archer's path. Now a new challenge appears before Kyuji. The young man put everything into range, so his other indicators are weak. He will have to learn to notice the enemy from afar. He trains by creating an image of the enemy in his mind and tries to feel the alien presence next to him. But he is having a hard time. He used a healing potion. HP was restored a little. Then he decides to be attentive to movements and sounds and tries to walk on the ground. He looks weak and someone must bite him. And so, it happened. As soon as he says this, a pack of wolves appears in front of him. He has thoughts that maybe he should retreat, but he also thinks that if he defeats this pack, he will grow as a player. And in terms of levels, in terms of skill, that's why he pulls the bowstring and tells the wolves to attack him. The wolves take off, and Kyuji releases the bowstring and the arrow whistles through the air. He hits the wolf, and the others run away in fear. The remaining wolves surround the young man, holding him in a vice and growling viciously. Then Kyuji decides not to shoot at everyone and focus on one. He doubts that he will have time to shoot the wolf. One of the most ferocious and toothy wolf jumps on him from behind, but the young man reassures himself that it is just a game. Even if he loses, he will not die. He will only be offended. He will again be overwhelmed by memories of the past. A young girl enters the cabinet and asks for help with the code for assembly. Nagai replies that it will be difficult and will take some time, but he will do his best. And they also add about the morning request that he hasn't finished yet, and the girl apologizes for forgetting to say it, and because she asked Taniga to help with it. In the hallway, they ask her about her request for help, and the girl replies that she asked Nagai to do it just to be on the safe side and is not sure that he would have been able to handle it. Kyuji returns to reality and realizes that as a man, he does not want to lose. Let it all be a game, but the brain does not think so. Meanwhile, the young man receives a new automatic collection item, Fang of the Volga Thug. These wolves were not real, but the young man was truly afraid that they might tear him to pieces. And yet he won and survived. And the girl who had been standing there watching him all this time thought about how carefree this old man was. And the young man made his way deeper and deeper into the forest and met someone who acted like the master of this forest. It was a huge, saber-toothed monster that looked like a gorilla. And Kyuji looks at the huge monster and realizes that the first time he didn't notice how huge he was. He remembers how quickly he ran away then. However, now, for the sake of his revenge, he has upgraded his skills and weapons. The bow he had with him now had dropped from a spider-type monster and came with a pretty powerful skill attached to it. And the web arrow, which is released with sticky web, can be used 188 times without consuming MP, and this skill completely immobilizes the enemy. The young man's shooting range has doubled, and now he is sure that the power of this fire will not help. After all, she won't even know where the archer is. This is another victory without a fight. The young man hopes that everything will go just as smoothly. He fires a chain arrow that bounces off walls and tree trunks and crashes straight into the monster. Kyuji doesn't understand what the reason is. Since he hit it right and the monster is still sleeping, the damage must have been too small. Kyuji decides that none of this matters, and he will shoot at the monster as much as he can. Multiple chain arrows shoot towards the monster, biting into its skin from all sides. The young man understands that he has only a quarter of his endurance left, and he can no longer continue like this. But suddenly, the huge gorilla monster wakes up, and Kyuji notices something in his hand. The young man immediately understands what it is, but before he can react, the gorilla throws something at him. The ball has a very strong force, and the collision occurs. A monster gorilla stands in the center of the forest and looks at the scorched earth. A young man looks at all this from a tree above. He is shocked by the monster's strength and would not like to be hit by something like that. In principle, he does not want to be thrown at. He understands that such a projectile will be remembered for a lifetime, and he needs to quickly finish off this monster, but Kyuji does not see a way to do this. He thinks he can try a short-range arrow, but then he risks exposing himself, and it's not a fact that the monster will die from it. Watching the monster, the young man realizes that it is still looking for the guy and decides to act. He shoots the chain arrow sharply and hits first the tree trunk and then right into the monster's shoulder. However, the monster does not react in any way and only prepares a new charge. The monster starts to rush, and then Kyuji decides that he needs to shoot now. It shoots a short-range arrow and hits the monster. When hitting weak points, the damage is doubled. He continues to aim, but now with a web arrow. She envelops the monster from all sides and presses it to the ground, while the archer deftly runs to the other side. He aims the last arrow at the monster, already saying goodbye to him, but he suddenly grabs the rope with his huge paw. With a terrible roar and a grin, he begins to pull to the side, slowly freeing himself. The young man begins to panic. He shoots the short-range arrow again and again, but nothing happens. Suddenly, the monster gives up its last breath, and Kyuji, having closed his eyes before this, afraid that something will happen, looks at it questioningly. There is some kind of explosion and movement. Kyuji stands with his back straight in front of the corpse of a huge, terrible monster. The youth reaches level 10 because the boss monster of the location Forest of Light is killed. He also receives the item. Automatic collection, Fists of the Forest Sage. Kyuji triumphantly thinks that he succeeded, he grew up. He got to the 10th level and achieved his goal. He puts on the Fists of the Forest Sage, and his attack and range increase. And the young man thinks that the gloves look powerful. These gloves also have a skill called Black Smoke. The player can secrete a lump of smoking black mass that has an unpleasant smell. Kyuji realizes that this is the same skill that the gorilla monster had, and thinks about how to use it. But suddenly this thing appeared in his hand. Kyuji thinks it looks like a smoke bomb. But this disgusting, unpleasant smell that comes from the strange black ball does not give rest. And the young man throws the ball as far as possible. The ball falls and explodes somewhere far, far away, and Kyuji is surprised that the range works for throws too. At first glance, this thing looks like a normal black fog, but after a few seconds, Kyuji becomes wary. He covers his face with his hands to block out the smell, realizing he doesn't want to go there at all. Meanwhile, he gets another notification, and the guy, still holding his nose with his hand, sees information about the inventory for beginners. Finally, the time comes for the first battle between players. Then the action takes place in the initial city of Falst in a certain bar. and a young guy in a suit enters the establishment, greeting the owner, and the owner greets him. The young man orders one blood bear drink and opens the NSO General Branch tab. This thread is where information about the game is exchanged, from various tactics to casual conversations. Players see that someone has killed the gorilla that their party was about to kill. The boss monsters take a long time to recover, so the players will have to disband the party. But no one can figure out how this happened, because there were rumors about this fire. And people are speculating that perhaps it was the gorilla that knocked players off their feet with its stench alone, and the admins themselves removed this monster. However, those who came to the scene say that there are obvious traces of a battle. Players don't remember. Some other party going to kill a gorilla, and maybe it was killed by a random guild or a random player. The only strange thing is that there is no serious damage in this zone. Perhaps this is some unique pro skill that was given to a certain player. And this, of course, does not sound very fair, although in the era of VR and not such things are possible, it remains to wait for the next event to see who has opened what skills. The girl sitting on the roof is waiting impatiently for the next royal battle. This girl says that she understands why such players do not rise to the top, because now they have switched to discussing the royal battle. It would be better to try to enter the hunting grounds and conduct an investigation, as she does. She is very interested to know who will be left in the end. Battle Royale Day is the first event for NSO for newbies, and there are 30 minutes left until the start. As the name suggests, this is an inventory for players level 10 and below. Players fight each other until there is only one survivor left. And this time, all participants will be transferred to a completely new location. Naturally, information about it will not be published until the very beginning of the event. The map will become smaller over time, forcing players to fight. Healing and strengthening potions are prohibited. Instead, there will be chips scattered across the map, unique items created for this inventory. All of them have powerful effects, so you need to collect as many of them as possible. You can only take your gear with you, and not change it later. Kyuji thinks it would be a shame to miss just because players suddenly wanted to change their gear. It is very convenient that you are allowed to use all the skills that players acquired while leveling up to level 10, and Kyuji has 2 of them. He shoots an arrow and hits the bear straight. If the player is stationary for 30 seconds, the range is tripled after the shot, and he cannot move for another 30 seconds. Of course, Kyuji knows this is risky. Another skill he has is Transparent Arrow. This skill requires a lot of MP, but when the player shoots an invisible arrow, the invisible arrow cannot be dodged. If this arrow does not kill the enemy immediately, there is a high chance that his location will be revealed by the area of the shot, but it can be useful for intimidation. As a result, Kyuji's status by the time the event starts looks very, very pumped up. The young man decides that since he has decided to take part, he must try to win and must think through everything to the smallest detail. At this moment, a message comes to the participants of the royal battle that they will soon be transferred to the map. The countdown to the event begins. Kyuji tries to decide what to do: hide until the end and not engage in open combat, or try to kill as many players as possible. He doesn't know the correct answer. Meanwhile, the report reaches number 1. Ultimately, the young man decides to fight on his own terms. He finds himself standing in the middle of a plain. The sun is shining and the clouds are floating above, and he stands completely alone. And the young man sees someone running away from him. He thinks that this is an easy target and a lousy start. The man who is running says that he needs to get to the mountains quickly because no one can hit him at such a distance. He thinks that not a single archer would dare to use such an event, and Kyuji, pulling the bowstring, agrees with this thought. He aims at the running man, thinking that he is the only exception, shoots and hits the target accurately. Kyuji is jubilant about his first kill, but admits that it was nerve-wracking, but the idea of shooting at people doesn't sound very good. However, he understands that all this is a game, and here you rejoice at every victory after killing him. He collects loot from the chest, because you can collect chips from the killed player. Opening the chest, the young man sees that it is empty and explains that they were only transferred to the location, and he, in turn, set rules for himself. It sounds like kill as many as possible. The guy doesn't want to stay here for long and decides to move towards the mountains, because an invisible enemy can be a real problem. He understands that he has no chance in close combat, so he needs to strike first, and on his own terms, I would not want to deviate from his working strategy. He walks and sees small wooden houses that form a certain square. He thinks what kind of buildings these are. The doors are closed, and apparently no one has been here yet. He tries to open one door, but then they decide that it is better for it to remain closed, and he must be especially careful. And he looks inside the house and sees chips. He is very lucky to have found an unlooted location. Kyuji lifts at the chips he received. Before entering the house, he left the door open because cautious players would not risk going inside. The young man is thinking about his next task when he suddenly notices the enemy and the pistol he is holding in his hands. The guy, looking at the enemy through the window, thinks that he can win in range, but loses in speed. He, convulsively pressing his back to the wall, thinks about what to do. At the same time, sounds are already spreading behind the wall. Eventually, Kyuji shoots a transparent wall, the glass shattering into pieces, attracting the enemy's attention. The man starts running forward, and Kyuji aims at him. The young man pierces his enemy with a short-range arrow, and now you have 2 kills to his credit. The guy breathes a sigh of relief because this time his plan worked, but he still needs to collect all the chips as quickly as possible. He was about to leave the building, but then it dawned on him that the player had turned around on purpose because there was another one there. The young man would decide to lure him out with bait. He puts the chest out and hides himself and looks through the window. He thinks that it might just be his imagination and decides to wait another 30 seconds, but suddenly sounds start coming from somewhere in the darkness. It turns out to be a fully equipped player with armor and a huge shield. Kyuji laughs at his naivety and the fact that he thinks the arrow won't penetrate his armor. But the young man has the skill for this, and he jumps out of the balcony and pulls the bowstring. He uses a web arrow and flies over the enemy's head to aim at him. And the enemy starts screaming, not understanding how he did it and why he can't move, and Kyuji stands and watches this spectacle. And the second player still wants to say something, but the young man pulls the bowstring nearby, and from the neck of the second one, he prepares to finish him off too. But he suddenly begins to beg for mercy and offers to talk and give everything in exchange for life. And now Kyuji has 3 dead on his account. He understands that even though it is unpleasant, he cannot hesitate. And from the killed, he receives chips of special action of the magical world and a short teleport. Kyuji is about to move on when he suddenly hears strange voices behind him. One asks the other if everything is okay, and the other doesn't understand who these guys were. And the tall one explains that the crazy slime is a team of pro players, and it is unclear what they forgot at the event for beginners. Kyuji, standing aside, still doesn't understand what's going on. The tall guy says that everything is actually obvious, and the pro players want to beat all the newbies and take the top spot. Meanwhile, 2 pro players surrounded the little girl. One says that there is a special chip for her. The girl cries and begs them to stop. And the players are only amused by her tears. They admire how cool the development is in NSO. And the main one sits next to the tied-up young man and says that his comrades have not a drop of education, and the second one tries to appeal to their conscience, saying that isn't it shameful for a whole crowd to attack one girl. Real men fight one-on-one, and suddenly the boss steps on the tied man's head. They force him to give up all his chips, and then maybe they will let the girl go. The guy agrees, but asks to release her first, and then he will fulfill his part of the deal. The girl is released and runs away into the forest. They find a chip called Speed Boost and can't share it between them, and their main thing turns around because he hears some sounds from the forest. The boss tells them to stop having fun and run after the girl. They keep running after her, and she almost falls. And Kyuji is watching this scene from above. He sees the girl being pierced with a sword and decides to act. After all, even cruelty has a limit, and it releases its arrow. The arrow flies to the most brutal pro player. The tip is reflected in his eyes. And at that moment, when he laughs loudly at the girl, calling her such a weakling, the arrow pierces him. His comrades don't understand what happened. They look around in bewilderment and call this shot a stray shot, but he was just unlucky. Meanwhile, Kyuji's next target says not to underestimate his range because the enemy is nearby. While one shouts that the shooter needs to be found, the young man shoots a chain arrow. It hits the screaming man right in the head. The others are already starting to panic. They don't understand where the shooter is or what's going on. They just need to find where he is hiding. The leader, listening to the sounds, puts his finger to his lips, telling him to shut up. Another arrow flies past them, but they jump aside in time and it doesn't hit anyone. Suddenly, something else happens that throws the other young man aside. The boss reports that there is someone else here, and Kyuji is at risk of being exposed. He is called the Invisible Player. Some kind of scuffle begins. The boss takes out a knife and starts waving it in all directions. He thinks that things are bad because you can't aim at an invisible man, while the boss says that this player is quite fast. And the second person, seeing how the main player is fighting, says that he can't keep up with me. Suddenly, the girl who was watching Kuji's training appears, waving her claws and knives and saying that they won't escape from her. Kyuji takes aim and shoots, but he also misses and hits the ground. The fighting players jump to the sides. One of them turns his head in the direction from which Kyuji is shooting. Meanwhile, the girl furiously jumps on the main villain with sabers, intending to cut him to pieces. She says that she will kill everyone because people like them irritate her. She has amazing speed and very soon defeats the main one. Kyuji watches all this and thinks how he can get into such a speed. He needs to get closer, and suddenly a voice is heard behind him. He let his guard down, but he still doesn't understand how it got to him so quickly. Maybe it used a speed boost chip. And his enemy says that now Kyuji will know how to challenge them, and immediately the sound of a magic mine is heard. They put a dagger to him, but the young man takes out his chip and grins triumphantly. The main character's opponent only had time to be indignant at the archer's smile when an explosion thundered. Kyuji had already dealt with 6 participants. This time he was saved by a short teleport. The system window shows that short teleport teleports a person a short distance. At that moment, the man remembered the girl. After examining the area, the guy did not find the girl and assumed that she had disappeared, or that she had been killed, or that they had dealt with each other. Suddenly, the voices of other participants were heard who had heard an explosion. The man realized that it was not worth staying there. A large group of players could cause a lot of problems. It was better to continue climbing the mountain. By this time, Kyuji had defeated 17 players. He had grown tired of frequent encounters with other participants. When the man finally reached the top, he found a stone tower there. The door was closed, meaning there might be chips there. At the top, Nagai was going to take a firing position, and at the exit, he set up a magic mine. The sound of the explosion will be a signal that someone has approached the tower. Even without chips from the tower, the protagonist was able to significantly increase his status. Now, his range is 200. The archer is amazed at the usefulness of range, because when combined with the sniper's fixed stance skill, he can shoot from a kilometer away. After appreciating the beautiful view of the location, Kyuji prepared for his merciless show. Using the fixed sniper stance, the man defeated another participant, bringing the total to 18 players. The most problematic are calm and focused players. Everything is complicated by the fact that the archer has poor vision of them. Opponents quickly understand where he is shooting from and move along the trajectory of the shot. As long as a man doesn't let them get too close, it plays into his hands. The tower is in the middle of a plain. There is nowhere to hide. And even if they reach the tower, the archer can shoot them while they are climbing the stairs. So in total, he had 40 victories. After 50 victories, the system notified the protagonist that he had taken the leading place in kills. Nagai also received the sniper's eye, which increases the range of vision by the length of the range. The reason for obtaining it was to use a skill that increases the range to kill a target. After acquiring the skill, the man was pleasantly surprised because now he clearly saw his goals. After another victory, Kyuji couldn't contain his joy, but he was haunted by the question of why so many players had gathered around the tower. After some thought, he began to guess. The area narrows around the tower where the archer has settled. The problem wasn't the only one. Players were furious with the man's fighting tactics. Nagai resigned himself to his role as an evil old man and began to prepare for a powerful wave of enemies. Using a stationary sniper stance, he began to attack his opponents with the chain arrow skill and thus had 124 victories to his credit. Using a short-range arrow, Kyuji took down another man, after which his rank was raised. The system window showed that shooting had been raised to level 2, meaning attack and range were increased by 10 when carrying a bow. By this time, the archer was exhausted. Having acquired the skill in time, Nagai dealt with 4 more participants. The opponents noticed that he was tired and went against him together. Unexpectedly, the main character received another skill, which he perceived as a call to victory. Kyuji's bowstring stretched towards the sky caused some of the participants to become worried. The archer then activated multi-shot. Using this attack, the man had 139 kills to his credit. The system window showed that the multi-shot allows up to 10 shots to be fired simultaneously within the player's range. Using this skill once more, the protagonist defeated 9 people. Inflamed, Kyuji was about to use the multi-shot for the 3rd time but stopped. The main character saw that of all the players, only the pro player with whom the girl had fought remained. Nagai assumed that this player had defeated the girl, and the man realized that this was the same archer who had dealt with his minions. Kyuji tried to deny it, remembering that he was the leader of the Mad Slime, and even then he wasn't sure that was their name. The main character pulled himself together because this gang asked to be killed. He easily deflected the arrow with his whip, causing Kyuji to bewilder, and with steadfast determination, he was going to avenge his comrades on the archer. This guy definitely knows what he's doing. It's obvious he's been playing VR games for years, and the main character doesn't stand a chance against him. The guy didn't even have any idea how to beat him, so there's only one way left. Kyuji needs to keep shooting, as long-range shooting is his fighting style. While the archer was trying to hit the target, his opponent encouraged him to keep shooting. The gang leader irritably wanted to know how much longer Nagai was going to shoot back. The guy was sure that the archer would not win because he would not allow him to do so. They'll just keep stomping around if one of them doesn't do something, but as long as Kyuji keeps him at bay, he won't be able to attack. The boy began to cover his whip with slime and asked the archer if he was sure he was safe. Having covered the whip completely with slime, the gang leader began his explanation. Thanks to the slime, the weapon can be extended. The whip grew so long that it could reach the main character, who clearly did not expect this. The guy barely managed to repel the attack, because he never expected that his opponent would hide such a trump card for so long. The guy laughed hysterically, because he was already anticipating his quick victory and was waiting for an apology from the archer. The man barely fought off this slippery weapon and was already about to leave the motionless sniper stance. But suddenly, I remembered how I studied this game on special websites and decided to try out my guess. Kyuji shot at the whip itself, not the slime around it. The recoil widened the interval between the enemy's attacks. The boy guessed the archer's plans, so he decided to speed up. But no matter how hard the gang leader tries to change the direction of the attacks, Nagai still hits the whip right on the head. While the guy didn't understand where the main character got his aim from, Kyuji had already chosen the moment and was ready for the final attack. While the gang leader was sure that the archer was only delaying the inevitable, Nagai released an arrow. The arrow hit the base of the whip, finally breaking it. In this game, weapons have a durability limit and can break. Without wasting a second, the protagonist released his arrows, declaring that this was the end for the guy. The loser cursed the archer, clearly not expecting the outcome of the battle. Kyuji knew that it was impossible to determine the value of the weapon's durability, but he was glad that his tactics worked. So his study of strategies was not in vain. The archer was confident of his victory, but after he was wounded, he did not immediately realize what was happening, because, in his opinion, there was no one else left. The girl was almost jumping with happiness because she succeeded. It was that same girl. She had spent all this time in invisibility, although Nagai did not understand how she had passed the mine. She explained that she climbed with her claws, although it was difficult. The man realized his carelessness. The girl was delighted with the archer, especially with the show he put on, but for Kyuji, it was a complete failure. And so ended the first event of the man. The administration thanked all the players who took part in the royal battle to 10 and announced the results. The first place was taken by the player Nikoko. The main character took the third place. The second place was taken by the player who hid all the time. Nagai would like to call the second player's tactics cowardice, but admitted that it was a working tactic. The cat girl who won first place killed 5. The player who hid did not kill anyone. This upset the archer, and he thought that maybe he should have hidden and kept a low profile. Next up are the category awards. The Most Kills award and First Kill award go to the Kyuji player. The main character feels awkward about the screenshot that was chosen for his award. It was also announced that the top 3 would receive NSO medals as a reward, but the archer is still flattered, because third place is also a good result. As a man, Nagai cannot accept this result, so he decided to take first place next time. The main character is on fire with motivation, and the archer is happy that he has a goal. The first event in NSO is coming soon, and it will be an event for newbies. The leader of the Mad Slime has announced that he will crush the newbies and rise to the top of the rankings. This was a promo video from the team. The other players laughed at it, because in the end, no one from the gang even made it into the top 3. Players had mixed impressions of the event, with some mocking the crazy slime, or saying that they had a bad reputation but were strong. Someone tried to keep their level below 10, collected equipment, learned skills, but still quickly lost. After all, in battles between players, you can never be 100% sure of your victory. Someone admitted that this time they got skilled newcomers. The first place is very calculating, tried not to get into a fight once again. The player in second place was just lucky, he hid well. Kyuji was said to have used some kind of bug, as it was impossible to defeat 59 players. Someone noted that he used both hands to shoot, suggesting that he was ambidextrous, although few believed that it was possible to kill so many participants with a bow. Nagai shot from a huge distance, but the players didn't want to believe that he had put all his points into range. Players at low levels have weak defenses, so they are easy to kill, but the higher the level, the less effective his strategy becomes. A small number of players were of the opinion that the main character shoots like a real sniper, that even pro players will have a hard time dealing with him. At this point, the crazy slime released a video with excuses. They admitted their loss, but disagreed with the results, especially regarding the archer. This group accused the main character of cheating, to which they received a lot of ridicule and negativity from other players. After reading these comments, the guy was furious and wanted to get even with everyone. The slime man was going to take revenge on Kyuji for his loss. A day later, the archer was walking around the city, still feeling annoyed about his loss. But he realized something. Kyuji was able to kill so many players because he kept them at a distance, and he lost because they were able to get close to him. His tactic of attacking from maximum range so that the enemy cannot attack in return works. The archer should continue his training in this direction. When the man came to the NSO medal exchange point, he was going to improve his equipment and skills. In total, he received 209 medals for the event. Most of them were received for the number of kills. At first glance, this is a lot. The exchange rate in the game is high, so you need to choose wisely. The protagonist was not interested in fashionable equipment. He chose several skills. All that was missing for a complete set was new equipment. So the man went to a new zone. After all, at certain points you can get equipment. Nagai read about this on the internet and doubted the veracity of this text. If it was a lie, he would just laugh at himself. By this time, Kyuji had already arrived at the right point. After checking the system window, the archer realized that it was a lie. Unexpectedly for himself, he noticed something strange under his feet. At this moment, the main character falls screaming into a trap prepared by someone. Having landed unsuccessfully, Nagai decided to examine the hole and, having got used to the darkness, saw beetles. Kyuji was afraid of bugs, so he used the teleport arrow without wasting any time. The archer was pleased with the skill he had purchased with medals. The system window showed that the teleport arrow would teleport the player to the location where the arrow would be fired. And yet the annoyed man was stunned, because even for false information, this is too much. He was sure that those who were caught felt the same, so as a reasonable adult he could not leave it like that. Then the protagonist used the flaming arrow. This skill shoots a burning arrow. Upon impact, a small explosion occurs, causing additional damage. Kyuji immediately felt better after he dealt with the bugs. Then he drank a potion to restore his magical powers, apologizing to the insect lovers. But Nagai was sure that he was doing the right thing. As he was getting ready to go home, the man stopped. Over time, the bugs will recover, and the archer wanted to leave a warning for other players. At that moment, he saw a notification in the system window about reaching the maximum archer level. Now he can switch to a second job and change his class. Kyuji was completely focused on the false information and did not notice his reward. He came to the starting city, Falst. Before changing classes, the archer returned to the city for safety reasons. You can't choose a second profession yourself. The game makes a decision based on the style of play. This worried the protagonist, because at the very beginning he showed himself not very well, and he could only guess what profession he would get. Kyuji's class change has been confirmed. He evolved into the archer class. 10 more levels were added and the status was doubled. Having pumped up to the maximum level, the archer will increase the range by 110. Also received was a passive level 5 shooting skill, which increases attack and range by 50, and another new skill. Nagai now had a critical attack skill. Critical shot is a chance of a strengthened shot depending on the player's level. The protagonist can't rely on chance, but it's better than nothing. He's happy that he's become much stronger. Getting a second job isn't that hard, and considering that Archer is unpopular, it's not the strongest job. Kyuji can just quietly rejoice at his rightfully earned evolution. Now the man needs to figure out where to start. With the Western strong and the clouds, the monster birds looked calm. In real life, such a bird would not fly. That is one of the pleasures of virtual reality games, to feel like you are in a fairy tale. The monster was defeated with one shot, which shocked the protagonist. Perhaps they are so weak or arrows do more damage to them. In order not to get lost in conjecture, Kyuji decided to try again. One of the birds turned out to be smarter and hid in the clouds. The arrow, having hit the cloud, did not fall, and this interested the archer. Using the teleport arrow, Nagai found himself on a cloud. The man didn't think it would work, but he was really floating in the clouds, although he had better not look down. Looking around, he noticed that there was no one and the birds had disappeared somewhere. Then he saw a shadow. At first, Kyuji thought it was a floating castle, but it flew like a bird. Looking closer, the archer realized that it was a dragon. Even as a child, Nagai thought that dragons were cool. His appearance alone is the personification of strength and coolness. If a man can extract materials from it and use them to create new weapons or armor, then there is a chance to create special equipment. Dragons are a classic boss in any game. Also, the main character is often given the power of a dragon. While the archer was deep in his thoughts, the beast did not even pay attention to him. This was Nagai's strongest opponent. 3 days had passed since the man began playing, which meant he could be killed. But if anything happened, he could escape at any moment. Kyuji pulled himself together and resolutely headed towards the monster. He was now an archer, which meant he had become stronger, and he wanted to defeat this dragon. The main character attracted the dragon's attention because he was his enemy. The beast used a roar, and in order not to get hurt, the archer decided to rise higher with the help of a teleport arrow. Frightened, Nagai realized what kind of clouds these were. It was enough to want to rise up to find himself on one of them. The dragon used air breath to attack, but Kyuji quickly reacted and jumped down. It was dangerous, because there was not even ashes left from the cloud on which the main character stood. A little girl ran to the headman, informing him of the trouble. At that time, the beast was about to use the lunge. By that time, the headman came out onto the balcony, and the girl reported that someone had challenged the dragon of winds and clouds, which greatly shocked the old man. The most amazing thing is that the dragon of winds and clouds accepted the challenge. Jumping up, the man almost ended up in the beast's mouth, but managed to use the teleport in time. Watching Kyuji fight, the elder prayed that the protagonist would be granted unwavering strength of spirit. Nikoko easily defeated the animal, as she had already gotten used to these hunting grounds. She wanted to become even stronger at all costs, otherwise she would not be able to catch up with him. At that moment, the girl received a notification from the administrators. She came to the starting town of Falst to learn about the new Colosseum. The announcement said that it would allow players to take part in battles with other players using battle tickets that were given out once a week. In this location, you can get a lot of experience and become stronger. If this is a battle with other players, then the girl hoped to meet the main character there. But with weak armor, he cannot defeat Nekoko, so it all needs to be changed. But the girl believed that he would definitely become stronger and wanted to know where he was now. Now the maximum range of Kyuji is 240 meters. The clouds in this area are the same size, about 2 meters, so the distance to the dragon is 210 meters. He was able to hit the dragon, and the beast responded with a roar. The distance between the opponents was 310 meters, and for the archer it was too far. But after barely escaping the attack, Nagai was able to get into a comfortable position at 196 meters and hit the dragon. Although he was already quite tired from the length of the fight, the man's endurance and the number of clouds become less and less, while the dragon began to super attack. Dodging, Kyuji used a teleport arrow, but something clearly went wrong. The protagonist finally saw that his legs were gone, but the dragon didn't give him a break and used air breathing. Nagai wanted to jump, avoiding the attack, but quickly realized that jumping was no longer possible for him. At the last moment, he used teleport. After the unsuccessful teleportation, the man will not last long, and he is well aware of this. The completely desperate Kyuji has already begun to be overcome by thoughts of losing. It seemed easier to jump off, The hero just wanted to drop everything and run away. If he did that, then it would all happen again. Nagai had become stronger and had come so far. He couldn't give up now. Believing in himself, the archer assumed a motionless sniper's stance. There is no retreat. Let the beast see that Kyuji is serious. The protagonist's final attack was a short-range arrow into which he put all his remaining strength. Just before waking up, the man thought about ending the game, but suddenly he woke up screaming about the dragon. The girl was glad that the archer had awakened until he realized where he was. Then she explained that it was a hidden storm village that was located on top of a storm mountain. Although it was a remote village, the living conditions there were good. But more importantly, the villagers were grateful for his arrival. The man was recognized by the dragon of winds and clouds himself, which means Nagai should receive a reward proving his courage. Seeing the dragon's sign, Kyuji understood everything and finally realized his victory. The elder asked the girl to call him when the archer wakes up. The old man wants to talk to him. Remembering about his legs, he checked their condition. They were as before. To restore them, he would need an expensive regenerative potion. The main thing was that it was sold in this village. Kyuji was able to defeat the dragon and wanted to know what the reward would be. At this point, someone was heard calling. The old man was glad that the main character had awakened, and without introducing himself, he told the man a local legend. The dragon of winds and clouds appears on windy days when there are many clouds in the sky. The dragon leaves its mark on those whose courage it recognizes, and then dissolves into the clouds. The legend of the dragon's rebirth has been passed down in this village for many generations. Giving a warm welcome to the owner of the sign is part of ancient traditions. Therefore, they will provide the archer with housing and medicine. As soon as Nagai thanked the elder, the old man added that the discount is only for the first time. And since Kyuji has the mark of the dragon, the elder wants to ask him for a favor. The man immediately realized that he was being offered a new quest. First, Nagai wanted to see his reward, so he temporarily refused. To which the old man responded calmly and agreed to wait if the man changed his mind. If the player has fulfilled certain conditions, the NPC will react to this and behave accordingly. He will simply wait. The main character left the game and immediately went to the player bag page. Thanks to this service, you can even check the status, skills, and items of the character outside the game. And there was something that interested the man. Nagai received the Houri of Storms, which has 45 points of defense and 75 points of magic defense. The man was pleasantly surprised by such high indicators. After all, when it comes to armor, the most important thing is to protect the torso. Houri also has a combat skill. A simple but effective gust of wind that can definitely come in handy for the main character. The skill creates a gust of wind in the specified direction. Nagai also received the Hakama of Wind, which has 40 points of defense and 60 points of magic defense. The stats are lower than the Houri, but they have a unique skill called Whirlwind. It significantly slows down the falling speed and reduces the overall weight. Kyuji wants to see if he can ride a gust of wind. The last thing he got was the Tabi of the Clouds. They add 80 points of speed to the player. Leg equipment is usually geared towards speed, so the archer wasn't surprised by the shoes, but he was interested in the skill. Floating Cloud is a skill that creates a climbable cloud for 5 minutes, creating 3 clouds per hour. In total, he can stay in the air for 15 minutes. The protagonist was so engrossed in studying the new equipment that he didn't even notice the notice from the administration. When he opened it, he learned about the Colosseum. The next day, the archer found time to come back to the elder to find out his request. The old man did not expect it, but was very glad that the man agreed to listen to him. At first, Kyuji wanted to return to Falst and try out the new armor in the Colosseum. But if his theory was correct, there was still equipment left in this village, and the archer did not want to ignore the elder. The old man's request is very simple. A monster has appeared on the Mountain of Storms and is attacking the villagers. So the old man asks Kyuji to deal with the 100-eyed lizard. Nagai decided that as soon as he collected the entire set, the first thing he would do would be to go to the Colosseum. A 100-eyed lizard comes from the gorge. It must be defeated before it reaches the village. Kyuji immediately realized that this was a quest to protect the village. The approaching enemy will increasingly put pressure on his nerves. The difficulty is that he will be climbing from below. You still have to hit him. For long-range combat, this is fine, but Nagai wanted to know how to deal with this in close combat. The elder promised to provide support for the main character. The priest created a cloud, and the man realized that he would fight on it. When the center of gravity shifts, the direction changes. Squatting, the cloud is released. Straightening, the cloud rises. Everything is intuitively clear. With this, the archer can definitely fight back. The old man wished the man luck. The elder's disappearance is not a mistake, but a game feature. He is currently in an isolated battle space. This battle is part of the quest. You can fight the conventional boss of the location, or you can run away. But the battle space is surrounded by invisible walls. You can't escape from there. Victory or defeat, the battle will continue until one of two outcomes occurs. Nagai noticed something in the sky. Finally, a lizard appeared in front of Kyuji. The archer used the scope, aimed it at the enemy's eyes, and used a multi-shot. The lizard moved slowly, making it an easy target. Nagai kept shooting off the eyes. The man already thought that the monster was retreating, but then its weak spot appeared. Then the archer used the gust of wind. By shooting an arrow along this stream, he would increase the range and power of the attack. The plan was continuous fire at full blast. Using the skill short-range arrow, Kyuji didn't expect to see a flock of flying eyes. Suddenly, the light went out, and the winged eyes lit up. This could only mean one thing. Little monsters shoot beams from their eyes. It was a high-speed attack that almost hit the man. While the archer was shortening his range, the lizard had time to return to its original state. And that meant that it was time to start shooting at him again. This is a quest for those who have received the sign of the Dragon of Winds and Clouds. Frivolous monsters in games can be met in a group that has high health. Nagai went alone, so the fight will be long in any case. Without knowing it, the main character signed up for hell, and he was very worried that such protracted fights were bad for his back. In the end, Kyuji managed to defeat the lizard. The man was worried that he had not yet received his reward or equipment. Perhaps there were other demands. The archer approached the elder and told him that he had defeated the monster, to which the old man thanked him and explained that it had been a test, apologizing to his guest. The elder explained the whole situation. The village was isolated from the world due to its location, but at some point, trade with other settlements began. Smart newcomers began to forge the dragon's mark to get a warm welcome. The fakes turned out to be of very high quality, and the villagers could not distinguish them from the real ones. Those who provide a sign are treated and then asked to deal with the monster. If the traveler manages to kill the monster, then they will continue to provide hospitality. The monster is a spirit controlled by the priests of the lizard village. That's why the man didn't get any money or items for killing it. Kyuji was not angry with the old man, explaining that it was an interesting experience for him. When Nagai was about to leave, the elder stopped him because their hospitality includes more than just discounts. The old man presented two pieces of equipment. The archer immediately recognized them as part of an aerial set. The first item was the cloud-piercing gloves. They added 35 attack points, 15 defense points, and 50 range. The gloves protect the fingers that pull the bowstring. They have a higher attack than the gorilla gloves. Well, the advantage of the gorilla gloves is their unique skill. Both can be useful depending on the situation. The second item is an elegant scarf that adds 30 points to health and 70 points to magic. Accessories or headdresses increase health and magic. Very useful because a man's magic is quickly spent. The elder said that there was one more piece of equipment left, intended for the main character. The item is kept in the village treasury. The old man asked the archer not to forget the courage he showed in the battle with the dragon. Finally, he wished Kyuji good luck. The next day, Nagai arrived at the Colosseum in full combat readiness. Now it's time to check how good the new archer's equipment is. Tickets to the Colosseum are given out every week, where you can take part in various battles with real people. This time, Nagai will also participate. The man gave away his combat ticket at the entrance. There is only one rule: the one who kills the most wins. The system asks you to wait while it searches for other participants. The system sorts players by level. Unlike the royal battle, there is no hiding in the Colosseum. All that remains is to fight, which is ideal for practicing in combat with players. The search has been completed, and the transition to the arena has been announced. There were about 100 people, there was almost no space, and everyone's eyes were shining. They just announced 10 seconds before the start. There were a lot of inspired players around Kyuji, because for them, he was easy prey. He couldn't let his guard down. The fight began. Without a second's delay, the main character first used a gust of wind, and then flew up like a whirlwind. Nagai landed on a floating cloud that didn't move at all. Next came the secret technique of arrow rain. This skill forms clouds around the bow that shoot arrows for 5 minutes. In the village treasury, the man received a storm bow, which adds 100 points to attack and 80 to range. Rain of Arrows is a secret weapon technique. Unlike normal skills that only require mana, this one has a cooldown. Until it expires, the technique cannot be used again. The attack is massive. The arrows themselves hit weakly, and you can't hit weak points. The damage goes well for those who pumped up evasion, but it doesn't really affect players with high defense. The most problematic ones are those who destroy arrows with attack skills. In the end, Nagai killed 38 people, which the score considered a good result. The archer did not expect that there would be so many. I suppose the element of surprise played a role. Some of the participants managed to quickly approach Kyuji. He was scared, but at the same time, excited. The archer wanted to know if he could win with the skills he had recently acquired. Nagai must train hard to prepare for the next event, the Battle of the Three Kingdoms. The rules are still unknown, but one thing is already known. In this event, ranks do not matter. They will have to fight with the best players who have already advanced to the 3rd level.